There is a question that every serious tradition of thought eventually runs into, no matter where in the world it appeared, no matter what language it used, no matter what century it was working in. The question is this: when you experience the world around you, when you see a fire burning, feel its heat on your skin, hear it crackling, how sure can you actually be that what you are sensing corresponds to something real? That the fire is there even when you close your eyes, that it would be there even if no one were watching. And if you decide that yes, the world outside the mind is real, then a second question immediately follows. What exactly is it made of? How do you sort everything that exists into the right categories? Is the fire the same kind of thing as the stone it sits on? Is the heat it gives off the same kind of thing as the fire itself? Or is heat something different, a quality, a property, rather than a thing? These are not idle questions. They are the foundation on which science, law, and ethics all rest. And they were answered carefully, rigorously, in at least two places in the ancient world, completely independently of each other, arriving at answers that are, at their core, remarkably similar. This video is about those ideas, not the lives of the people who held them, the ideas themselves, their logic, their structure, and what it means that two traditions on opposite sides of the world ended up asking the same questions and reaching the same answers. One of the most ambitious projects in ancient Greek thought was deceptively simple in principle. Make a complete list of everything that can exist, not a list of animals or plants or stars, a list of the highest level types, the categories that anything whatsoever must fall into. The answer proposed was 10. The most fundamental is substance, the thing itself, existing in its own right, not as a property of something else. A dog is a substance, a mountain is a substance, a person is a substance. Then there are 9 further categories that describe features of substances: quantity, quality, relation, place, time, position, state, action, and affection. Think of a dog sitting in a park at noon. The dog is the substance. It is one dog. Quantity. It is brown. Quality. It belongs to someone. Relation. It is in the park. Place. It is there at noon. Time. It is sitting. Position. It is healthy in state. It is panting as action. It is being watched. Affection. All 10 categories. One dog in a park. The point is not just to be tidy. The claim is that these 10 categories are not conventions of language or habits of thought. They map onto the actual structure of reality. Everything that exists fits into one of these 10 slots. Nothing falls outside them. The Vaisheshika school of ancient India set out to do exactly the same thing. The kinds of things that words can actually point to. They came up with 6. The first is substance, the thing itself, the dog again. The second is quality, the properties a thing has, its brownness, its warmth, its weight. The third is motion or change, the dog running, the fire spreading, the stone falling. The fourth is the universal, the general type shared by many individual things, the dogness that this dog shares with every other dog that has ever existed. The fifth is the particular, the thing that makes each individual uniquely itself. What makes this dog, and not any other? The sixth is inherence. This is the relationship that binds a quality to the thing it belongs to. Not just that the dog is brown, but what it means for brown to actually belong to this dog, to be in it, to be part of it rather than just floating nearby. A seventh was later added: absence, the idea that the non existence of something is itself a real and philosophically significant fact. The fact that there is no fire in this room right now is not nothing. It is a genuine state of affairs that matters, that affects what you can and cannot do here. The overlap is striking. Both systems start with substance as the foundation. Both separate things from their qualities. Both recognize that general types, dogness, redness, fireness, are not just labels, they are philosophically real and need their own treatment. But there is one place where the Indian system asks a question the Greek tradition largely left unanswered. The Greek list includes relation as one of its 10 categories, but it does not press further and ask, what kind of thing is a relation? What is it exactly that connects a quality to the thing it belongs to? The Indian system makes that a category of its own. Inherence. It is not enough to say the dog is brown. What is the relationship between this dog and its brownness? What makes the brown actually belong to the dog rather than just existing alongside it? Is that belonging itself a kind of entity, a real thing in the world? The Indian tradition said yes, and named it and analyzed it. That is a philosophically more demanding move, and it addresses a problem that Western philosophy did not fully reckon with until the medieval period. Both traditions recognize that not every argument is a good argument, and that the difference between a valid and an invalid one is not a matter of taste or persuasion. It comes down to structure. The Greek tradition worked this out through the syllogism, a three-part argument. You start with a general rule, you apply it to a specific case, you arrive at a conclusion that cannot be false if your starting points are true. All metals conduct electricity. Copper is a metal, therefore, copper conducts electricity. If you accept those first two statements, you cannot deny the third, not without contradicting yourself. The logical form does the work, not rhetoric, not authority, just structure. This matters because it separates good reasoning from merely convincing reasoning. A skilled speaker could convince a crowd that copper does not conduct electricity with emotion, with confidence, with repetition. But the syllogism shows that the argument is wrong, regardless of how it is delivered. The form overrules the performance. The Indian tradition developed its own theory of inference, called Anuman, and it is equally rigorous, with one important difference we will come to. A proper Anuman moves through 5 steps. You begin with a claim you want to establish. There is fire on that hill. Then your evidence, what you can actually observe. There is smoke rising from it. Then a general rule, backed by a concrete example that everyone can verify. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Just as there is always fire beneath the smoke you see rising from a kitchen. Then you apply that general rule to the case at hand. The smoke on this hill is exactly the kind that is always accompanied by fire beneath it. And then the conclusion, the original claim now established. Therefore, there is fire on that hill. At the heart of this is a concept called invariable connection. The general rule linking smoke to fire is not just assumed. It is built from experience, from noticing again and again that smoke and fire always appear together, and that you have never once found smoke without fire somewhere underneath it. Think of a detective at a crime scene. She does not see the crime happen, but she sees the evidence, a broken window, muddy footprints, a missing watch. She has a general rule from experience. This pattern of evidence is invariably connected to a forced entry. She applies that rule to this case and reaches a conclusion. Someone broke in. That is inference from visible evidence through an established general pattern to an invisible conclusion. Here is the important distinction. The Greek syllogism works through guaranteed certainty. If your general rule is true and your specific case is true, the conclusion must be true. There is no gap. But the Indian tradition asked a harder question. Where does the general rule come from? The answer is from experience, from observation, from noticing that smoke and fire always appear together, and holding that pattern as reliable until something forces you to revise it, which means it could in principle be revised. If you somehow found smoke with no fire anywhere beneath it, just once, the rule would need to be reconsidered. This makes the Indian account of inference closer to how science actually works than the Greek formal model. When scientists say that smoking causes cancer, They are not offering a logically guaranteed deduction. They are offering an invariable connection, established through thousands of observations, with no confirmed counterexamples, that licenses a reliable inference. That is Vyapti. That is Anuman. The vocabulary is 2,500 years old. The logic is the same one, running inside every clinical trial today. Both traditions ran into what is probably the hardest problem in all of classical philosophy. And it sounds almost embarrassingly simple when you first hear it. When we say that a rose and a fire truck are both red, what exactly are we saying? Is there something called redness that actually exists? Something both of them share? The way two siblings share a parent? Or is redness just a label we invented? A convenient word we apply to things that look similar, with nothing real behind it? The reason this is not a trivial question is what it implies. When a doctor says that penicillin kills bacteria, she is not talking about this specific bacterium in this specific patient. She is making a claim about all bacteria of this type, everywhere, in every patient who will ever be treated. That claim only means something if bacterial types are real, if there is genuinely such a thing as this kind of bacterium, not just a collection of individual organisms that happen to resemble each other. And when a judge applies a law, she is doing the same thing. The law says, any person who does X shall face Y. That sentence presupposes that person and doing X are real general types that can be identified reliably across different cases. If universals are just labels, the law has no stable meaning from one case to the next. The moment you try to generalize, to predict, to make a rule that applies beyond a single instance, you are committed to universals being real. Both traditions understood this. Both traditions arrived independently at the same careful answer. Universals are real. Redness is not just a word. There genuinely is something shared between red things. But universals do not exist floating free of the physical world in some separate, perfect realm. They exist in the particular things that have them. Redness exists in the rose, in the fire truck, in the clay pot. You encounter it only through those specific instances. You cannot walk into a room containing redness itself, with no red things in it. This position rejects two extremes at once. One extreme says universals exist in their own independent realm, that somewhere there is a perfect, eternal form of redness, and all red things are merely imperfect copies of it. The other extreme says universals are nothing at all, just names we apply to things that happen to look similar, with no deeper reality behind the grouping. On this view, calling a rose and a fire truck both red is no different from calling them both things I saw on Tuesday, a convenient label, nothing more. Both traditions said neither of those works. Universals are real, but they are real here, in the world, in the things that instantiate them. The Indian system pressed into a further problem that the Greek tradition largely left open. If two things are identical in every way, same material, same size, same color, same properties, what makes them two distinct things and not one? Imagine two gold coins minted from the same batch, same metal, same weight, same image, same age. What makes them two coins rather than one coin existing in two places? You cannot point to any property that differs between them, because there isn't one, and yet they are clearly two. The Indian answer was Vishesa, ultimate individuality. Each fundamental thing carries something that makes it irreducibly this one and not that one. It is not a property you can measure or describe. It is simply the ground of this thing's uniqueness. You are pointing at it when you say not just a person, but this person, specifically and no other. Not their height or name or history, something prior to all of that. The bare fact that they are this one, this question, what grounds the numerical identity of individuals, occupied medieval European philosophy intensely for centuries. The Indian tradition had already named it, proposed a solution, and built it into their category system. Both traditions shared a foundational commitment: the world outside the mind is real, and our senses, used properly, under the right conditions, can give us genuine knowledge of it. This sounds obvious. It is not. In both intellectual worlds, serious thinkers were arguing the opposite. In India, one influential school held that the external world is ultimately a construction of consciousness, that what we experience as an independent reality is a kind of elaborate mental projection, not unlike the experience of dreaming, where an entire world, with texture, weight, other people, cause and effect, exists entirely within the mind, with nothing outside it corresponding to any of it. In the Greek world, sophist philosophers argued that reliable knowledge is simply impossible, that truth is relative to the observer. What feels warm to one person feels cool to another. What seems just in one city seems unjust in the next. If every perception is relative to who is doing the perceiving, where is the stable reality underneath? Both traditions pushed back directly. The world does not depend on any particular mind. The stone is hard whether or not you are pressing your hand against it. And your senses, when functioning properly and used carefully, can genuinely tell you about it. The Indian tradition built this commitment into a precise and systematic theory. It identified four valid sources of knowledge, four ways of arriving at a belief that actually counts as knowing something, rather than guessing, assuming, or being deceived. The first is direct perception, what you actually see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. You hold ice and feel cold. That is knowledge, not a theory, not an inference. Direct contact between your sense and the world. The second is inference, reasoning from visible evidence to an unseen conclusion. You feel a cold draft coming under a door and infer there is wind outside, even without seeing it. We covered this in the previous section. The third is comparison, recognizing something unfamiliar by relating it to something you already know. Someone tells you a gavial looks like a crocodile, but with a much longer, narrower snout. You have never seen a gavial, but when you encounter one, you recognize it, because you already knew what a crocodile looks like, and the comparison gave you a framework. The fourth is testimony, accepting knowledge from a reliable source who was in a position to know. You were not present when the doctor ran your blood test, but when she tells you the results, that is knowledge, provided she is competent, honest, and working from the actual data. Crucially, none of these sources are treated as automatically valid. Each has conditions: perception in a dark room, or under the influence of fever, or from too far away. That does not count. The system is not naively optimistic about the senses. It is precise about the conditions under which they can be trusted. Indian system was particularly precise about when perception goes wrong, and the analysis still holds up. You walk into a dim room and see what looks like a coiled snake in the corner. Your body reacts, heart rate up, muscles tensed, but you turn on the light and it is a coiled rope. The perception was wrong, not because your eyes malfunctioned, but because the conditions, poor light, an ambiguous shape, perhaps a state of heightened alertness, were not right for reliable perception of that kind of object. The system calls this failed cognition. It is not knowledge, and the point is not just to classify errors, but to specify precisely what conditions must be in place for perception to count as genuine knowledge. This is the same question at the foundation of experimental science. Under what conditions can an observation be trusted? How do we rule out distortion, interference, unreliable instruments? The ancient Indian logicians were asking it centuries before the scientific method had a name. Two traditions, thousands of miles apart. No known contact during the centuries when these ideas were taking shape. And yet, the same categories of existence, the same structure of valid inference, the same answer to the problem of universals, the same defense of a knowable world. One reading of this is historical curiosity. But there is a more important reading. The convergence may be telling us something about the problems themselves. That when you ask seriously what kinds of things exist and how we reason about them, and whether we can trust what we perceive, the answers do not vary arbitrarily from culture to culture. The way smoke reliably signals fire in India is the same way it signals fire in Greece. The way two coins can be identical in every measurable respect and still be two coins is the same problem whether you are working in Sanskrit or in Greek. The problems are the same because the world is the same. These ideas did not stay in the ancient world. The theory of inference sits behind every court of law that requires evidence before conviction. The analysis of perception sits behind every scientific protocol that specifies the conditions under which an observation counts. The question of universals sits behind every diagnostic category in medicine, every classification in biology, every law in physics. When a physician says, "This patient has pneumonia," she's applying a universal to a particular. Exactly the operation both traditions were trying to understand. The vocabulary has changed. The questions have not. And the answers these two traditions reached, independently, across the ancient world, are still the ones we are working with.